How's it going, y'all? Kind of fun to do this on my channel again for the first time in a little while. Last two I've done on Travis's channel, but since Travis decided that he's having a bit of fun with the Mickey Mouse, we decided we would do the set review on my side this time. So Travis, always a pleasure to have you, and one of the best teammates I could ever ask for. How are you doing?
Oh boy. Oh, thanks for having me, man. Dude, it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm so used to like controlling all the knobs and whistles behind the scenes. It's like, oh, I get to let somebody else do that for once.
Yeah,
So,
I get.
no, they, go ahead.
I get to be the one that does all the technical stuff. What's the term for it in theater? It's not. Is it just stagehand?
Yeah, so you're a tech person or stage manager. You're doing the stage
Or
managing
stage
right
tech.
now.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get to be both the stage tech and the a talking head, which is kind of a fun thing. So
Yeah, how
um,
exciting. Congrats, by the way. You were talking to someone who is going to FFTCG Worlds coming up here in about a month. So make
mm,
sure you take his opinion to heart.
yeah, it's very exciting and very nerve wracking. So hopefully everything goes well with that, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for you all the way, and hey, we'll see if any of these new cards are going to help you out.
I was say, and the fun thing is, it'll be like a pretty new format. Not a ton of time to really solve all these. Like, we've got a month, like
Yeah.
on the nose, to figure out what's actually good and what isn't good. So, without any further ado, what do you say we go ahead and get right into this?
Yeah, I'll just give the little caveat. I only tend to talk about cards from a standard competitive format. Also, because there's a lot, just in the interest of saving time, if Ghoul pretty much sums it up on his own, I'm gonna try to not say much to like repeat what he says. So if I just say like agreed, moving on, it's not because I'm like being dismissive. I don't want to over. He'll probably cover it all. So just putting that out there ahead of time.
All right. So we're gonna start off with Ifrit 16. So if you're unfamiliar with the Final Fantasy game, because characters are unique, they don't want this to clash with like Ifrit from 14. So they always have to put a little differentiator on there.
Hmm.
Forward job icon category 16, new category.
Woo!
Uh, Usually about a year turnaround. Although shockingly, next set they're somehow doing Rebirth next set. I don't know how they're pulling that one off. Um, so he is a 7 cost, 10,000 power haste. When he enters the field or deals damage to your opponent, when Clive primes into Ifrit, choose a forward opponent controls, deal it 10k, and has a special of Spit Flare, choose a forward, deal it 10k. So I think this card seems okay. I think that like it does probably kill two things the turn it comes into play, which is about the going rate for what a 7 CP forward needs to be doing, especially in fire. It has some pretty stiff competition with cards like the Demon. I've heard this compared a lot to like Braska's Final Aeon is another one you see a lot of comparisons with because they kind of both are like a 10k pop whenever it does something. BFA is when it's targeted or attacks. Ifrit is when it enters or deals damage. Um, there is a little bit of awkwardness with this. I mean, it's not nearly like the board wipe that something the demon can be, but it does hit 10k, which is really relevant. There's a lot of big fours out there. The demon can really struggle to sometimes like, if your
Yeah.
opponent has a bunch of 9ks in play, for instance, the demon isn't doing a lot, for instance, right? I'm going to be quite honest. A lot of the viability of this card to me, and like for icons in general, is just how good priming as a mechanic is. So something that is also, maybe it's played for a little while, but just getting into this set, there's a new keyword this set, which is a field ability called priming, which is that the baby forms of all of the icons, you can pay a cost to have them search the deck and play a copy of the icon right on top of the cell. So there's a bunch of extra rules that goes along with that. But for the most part, what ends up mattering is that if you play Ifrit, it's going to cost you 7. But if you prime into Ifrit, it's only going to cost you 6. And I mean, people unironically have played cards like Aranea and a lot of these 6 CP forwards that kill a guy. Now Aranea, I think it's played a lot more because of the burst, but that gives a lot of hope for Ifrit. I think the special is really nice as well. One cool bonus to being primed into is it keeps the name Clive as well, so you can use any copies of Clive or Ifrit for special fodder, which is really... I love that mechanic. It's one of the coolest things. I'm sad they don't all have specials, because I thought that was like the neatest idea with Ifrit. How are you
Mhm.
feeling on these?
Man, reading it, he sounds really strong to me, so I was kind of surprised you were just okay. I do have a few questions. For the special, and this goes with some of the other icons too, can you use summons with the name? Like, can you use an Ifrit
No.
summon for that? Okay, so it has to be an Ifrit 16 or a
It
Clive.
has to be. I mean, unless they printed Ifrit 16 summon. If they ever printed a summon called Ifrit
Okay.
16, you could do that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
And then when Clive primes into him, does that also trigger him entering the field, or
no.
is it essentially the priming is what is triggering it?
It's similar to like if you've ever played Magic and you have like the dual face cards, they're not entering the battlefield. When you prime into the other card, you are not entering play. Clive is just becoming Ifrit instead of Clive.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect.
So even something like Sid Randell doesn't stop it, for instance, because you're not entering the field with Ifrit. You are just turning Clive into Ifrit.
Okay, that's a good Sandrinde. I mean, he essentially still reads like he's, like you said, probably killing two things when he enters, which is really good, and then he's a continued threat to just keep. He just seems like a beater, and I think I'm really taken in by all the 10,000s on this card. The power means other than a Warrior of Light, nothing can really block him, and if you don't block him, he's going to kill something. And I was thinking about your comparison to the Demon. Sometimes the Demon can safely wipe a board, but there are times, and you and I know this, that the 8K or the 7 or maybe the 9 just isn't quite enough. Like 10, basically nothing's surviving that. So I'm really high on this card. I think he's going to see a lot of play as a beater, but I also fully agree with all these icons. If the priming mechanic just ends up not really being worth it, then I 100% could just see these falling off the cliff.
I mean, the thing about priming, and this is like a thing about priming in general, is that I think it's a mechanic that until I get a lot of games with it, I will not know how good it is.
Yeah.
Like...
Well, I think it leads to some awkwardness too, right? Because in a game with a damage zone where randomly you could lose a card there, you could like, oops, somehow I already drew the Ifrits, before the Clive. I actually can't prime into anything. That is a possibility.
I actually think damage is less relevant than the fact you're drawing 2 cards every turn. And a lot of really good decks draw a lot of cards. Like that's what one of the metrics of being a good deck is, being able to consistently get through your deck. And so, I mean, extra copies of Ifrit are still special fodder, which is great, but a lot of these cards are a lot better. If I'm paying 6 for this, I'm pretty happy, I think. If I'm paying 5 or paying 7, there's a lot of... You can kill anything with the 7 cost forward. Like, there's the bar for that is really... Like, if I pay 8, for instance, I can play a Cyan and wipe everything for 9.
Yeah.
So... I think it really does come down to that, and it's a mechanic. Like I said, it could be. There's not even like a real comparison I can think of. Like the closest I can think of is like a Brilliant Fusion in Yu-Gi-Oh, where like when these cards stay in the deck, they're really good, but the moment you draw them,
right.
But we haven't had anything like that before. Like like the warp. There was like a little bit of a comparison with like Magic and how that's worked. There just isn't a comparison for these that I can really make.
Yeah.
They could be great and really, really strong, and some of them read really, really good to me. I think Ifrit looks like kind of an average one. If the mechanic is really strong, then Ifrit's going to be great. If the mechanic comes out weak, though, I think Ifrit could be one of those ones that just kind of ends up being like, yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Moving along, we have Warrior of Light, 3 CP, Theorhythm, Category 1, EX Burst. Job Warrior of Light, when it enters the field, choose a forward, deal it 5k. If you have Crystal, do it 8k instead. So every single one of these Theorhythm protagonists gets a card this set. Most of them are printed at common. This one's like, okay. It's like defensible enough. The name is really bad, but I mean the job is great. And the name is also interesting because you have the Princess Goblin that can search it. But I think that like this is not going to be an all-star in any deck that plays it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if you see this beyond limited. Just kind of seems like it's built for that.
We have Cyan, Samurai, Category 6, 7,000 power. When Cyan enters the field, you can play a Category 6 forward, a cost 3 from your hand onto the field. Put Cyan into the break zone. Choose an ability that is choosing only one Category 6 forward you control. Cancel its effect. Bushido Tempest, special, tap, choose a forward, deal it 1,000 damage for each card in your break zone. You're the 6 guy. What do you think of this?
Man, like, I love the sacrifice effect in the sense that 6 basically had no protection, so I love that it has something that gives it some protection, but you lose the card to do it. Like, the Cyan backup isn't great, but 6 doesn't have a lot of backups, and so I don't know if you can cut that backup to put this guy out there. He has a huge range of targets with forwards of 3 or less. There's Lock. Well, is that it? Lock, Go-Go. I don't know. There's a lot of 4 costs in 6 too, so just like, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with this card, but it's one of those like I don't know how I'm gonna play this. Like I love the protection effect. The special I find to be kind of weird too. Six. I don't know why it deals with the break zone. That's just kind of.
Oh, I actually love the special. Not like gameplay wise, but like thematically, he's doing Bushido. He's doing the Bushido thing of charging up.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, the theme is great. I just like gameplay wise, it's like so the special it makes it, and he is it makes it like oh now it's vulnerable to Mist Dragon as well. So I don't know. Like I hope I'm underselling him because I'm always looking for stuff to make that 6 deck better. But I'm just like I don't know. I don't know what I'm taking out for this. And what's the big banger 3-drop? You can't play Edgar. You can't play Sabin. You can't play Old Celis. Maybe it's meant for the new Lock Celis combo. Like maybe that's where it's supposed to shine. I don't know. What do you think?
there's stuff here. Astrago is the big one. Not needing to find a water card to play Strago could really matter for that deck, actually.
That's a great point.
I think the special could potentially be another one of those ways to get those bigger pings if you really need them. Like in a pinch, you can intercept or haste them. It really sucks that it isn't just S. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have really hurt, but and like protecting Big Lock is really nice. Like there's weird things that he can do, but is this enough to bring 6 back on its own? I don't know, which then makes me think, like, could you play a 6 package? Maybe, like, you play him plus Lock in, like, a Fire Ice deck, or there's, like, the realm, like, the Water Realm that bounces and gains a crystal. Maybe that's really good. And then also, even in a 6 deck, isn't the Legend Lock that, like, generates crystals actually, like, a pretty decent board wipe for that deck? That, like, sometimes you just end up with a bunch of cards in hand. You could just, if you're going to play a Cyan forward, wouldn't you consider that one instead? Like, that's another, like, big question. I think so. So, I think he's interesting. There's usually these effects. I call them the Al Cid effect because I'm a boomer, or not a boomer, a zoomer that started in Opus 14. That I guess technically old Al Cid did it as well. These are usually not terrible. They're better when they play from the break zone than from the hand. But,
of course, yeah.
There are good targets. Steve brought a good one. Like maybe in Water Fire, you can use this as another way to play Mog from your hand, so you don't need to use your Tyvis to play it. And that Mog, he called it one of the biggest 0 heroes in the game with this card that like saw no play.
Yeah.
And now that little idiot is everywhere.
But like you said, with Tyvis, you can directly search the Mog, then play it. With the Cyan, you would have to naturally have it in hand at the same time.
Yeah, it is a very weird one. I think the card is fine. It is a question of where it would actually end up being played.
Yeah.
I should have gone to the full art. We have Deadly Nightshade. This is a new cycle of monsters. It's a rare cycle this time. 1 cost, Job Mandragora. Category 12 could be relevant. So the whole cycle has this first line of text, so I'm not going to refer to it from now on. But whenever you attack, you can sacrifice it. And they have a second ability whenever they are put from the field of the break zone by any means, whether they're broken, sent as cost, or by their own ability. This one deals 7k. It's a pretty... 7k for 1 is pretty high. That's a pretty solid ping.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of turning any one of your forwards into Edge from last set. The Edge giving them a thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's a legend quality card right there, right?
Yeah.
There's some neat stuff here. You could, attack with the Megissa, ping your own Megissa, play an Axstar from the deck, Dull Freeze all their field. Axstar plays an Alphino, gets you another way to ping your Megissa. There's some stuff here you could consider. Also, because it's by any means, if you're in Water Fire with Wish of the Fens, this could be a way of, shooting one for a 7k reduction and then 7k pop on another. Could be really powerful. It's interesting. I don't think this is one of the best ones in the cycle, but it's... I think you could do worse for, a 1 cost.
Well, and we're at the point in the game where there's so many strong monsters now. They really got to bring something new to the table to see use. I would be surprised to see any of these see much play unless they're in service to some combos. So, there's a new Ice Legend we'll talk about that cares about having a bunch of monsters that maybe when they sacrifice. So, if there's a certain combo, I think maybe you'll see them. Other than that, again, there's a lot of good monsters right now. So I can't see why you would add conditional ones like this over ones that already do the job they do so well.
And Fire is really not struggling to do damage.
Yeah, I know.
So we have Clive. This is our big fancy signature card. This is our other Fire Legend. So 4 cost, fire forward, job dominant, category 16. He has haste. Both him and Ifrit have it. Priming Ifrit, so if you pay a fire and 1, you can search through your deck for the Ifrit and play it without using the stack, which is kind of cool because Clive himself doesn't have an entry ability, so there is no response window if you wanted to do that. So he is a Anthem for icons and dominant forwards, gives them all 1,000 power, and then whenever he deals damage to your opponent, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. So this is kind of a new thing they started kind of borrowing from Magic. You know, Red and Magic is starting to get a lot of impulse draw and kind of like discard draw and things like that. And this whole idea that if you're willing to go to a low hand size, you can actually draw a lot of cards. I think the first card that did this was like, that I think of as like the Onion Knight from like Opus 16. That like you like play it, you discard 2, draw 2.
Yeah.
So if you go to no cards in hand, you could draw 2. I've seen a little bit of hype even when this card was spoiled before we had any clue what priming or Ifrit were. It's like, well, if you go to no cards in hand, you can punch in with this guy as a big 8K and then draw 2 cards, and he's kind of free at that point. And like, you have this threat still on field. I still kind of see that though, and I go, well, like, yes, this is better than Onion Knight in Opus 16, but like that Onion Knight, every time I tried to make it work, I always came away a little disappointed.
Yeah.
And like, do I really feel that much better about this? Now, granted, this is Onion Knight that also like conditionally is instead a double ping board wipe. Like, if you're playing this guy, I think it has to be because Ifrit is good. And Ifrit is probably, like, it's probably solid. I just don't know, is this the best thing you can be doing in Fire? For, like, the deck building costs as well. Like, I was messing around with, making a dominant tribal deck where it's, like, all the dominants and all the icons in the deck. And it gets really slot expensive when you think about like in category 6, when you're playing like 6 Sabins, how like you're always like, can I start shaving those Sabins down a little bit, to do, and it's like, it really starts feeling like that with this mechanic. And like, you could play 6 slots to the Clive Ifrit package, or you could throw 2 demons in your deck and feel good about that, right? Yeah. Or a Cyan. Like, is that better? I don't know. That's where I'm at with these two.
A lot of questions to be answered. Remind me with the priming, is it sorcery speed only, or can like you do it in response to something?
Sorcery speed only too.
Okay, so yeah, so if they like, you can't do it. Oh, on the stack, change them out. That'd be kind of probably be busted.
You can't like dodge a 9K kill spell by like turning him into a 10K.
Yeah, I do love that he doesn't inherently use the stack, especially with the priming. It's kind of weird he gets the power boost. Like, having played 16 pretty recently, too, I don't even think that's thematic. I feel like that should be one of the other icons' abilities. That being said, you could go kind of aggro with this guy. What if turn 1, you drop 3 cards to get Clive on the field. Maybe you then put out a backup. Boom, he immediately hits your opponent, and you just draw 2 fresh cards, and you'll have 2 on your next hand. Like, I don't know if that's the best thing you could be doing, but that's not a terrible use of him, and then you're threatening to bring out the Ifrit potentially, so he could maybe have some power there.
No, and he threatens to do it every single turn, so as long as you're able to consistently empty your hand, and then, but like, if you empty your hand, and then you go to combat, and they remove the Clive, you're gonna feel so bad. But like, you also, like, there's a world where you go, like, turn 1, Rufus Clive, and it's like, well, now I'm gonna draw 2, and you're gonna discard a card every turn until you deal with these 2.
It sounds like a great idea. I love that.
Like, you're discarding, I'm drawing. The next turn, I've got, 4 cards in hand, play 2 backups, swing it again, discard again, draw. Like, I can see the logic for this being an engine, but you have to be able to consistently get your hand to 0 every single turn for this side of the card to be good. And then how often is that going to matter? Like, I feel like half the time it's just like, well, actually, I want to pay 6 for Ifrit anyway.
Exactly, yeah, so who knows?
All right, we have Baby Clive. So there's 2 copies of Clive in this set. There's also a common. I wanted to make sure people knew it was the 16 set. So Clive is a 2-cost, category 16, job dominant. Does not have priming. You can't prime this guy into the big one. If any job, icon, or dominant you own or remove from game, Clive gains 4,000 power and brave, and then you can tap, sack, put him in the break zone to do 5k to somebody. I like this guy thematically. If he's killed an icon, he's absorbed their power and gotten stronger. Like, that's the lore. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's, like, terrible, especially in limited. I think this will be a house. Like, this thing's, like, very easily going to be a 10k, 9k brave.
Yeah.
And notably, let's say Clive Ifrit is the best thing in the game. Ifrit, when you prime into it, keeps Clive's name. So you can use this Clive as special fodder for that Ifrit. If, like, you want to go like full Sabin machine gun with Ifrit and just ping, 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 ping,
Yeah.
ping. Clive lets you do that. I don't think you would ever run more than one of this. I think maybe I could see 7 Clives, being the right number for that. But I think it's cute. I think that's like the main purpose it'll have in constructed outside of being, like I said, this will be a house in limited.
Yeah, this is mainly a limited card. I'll just mention that I've always been a fan of cards that are brave but have a tap ability, so you can use him to attack, still block, and then on the stack, tap and use the thing or whatever. So that's kind of cute. I always like those effects, but yeah, he's for limited.
Yeah, I do kind of wish he didn't sacrifice himself. I feel like it's not even that thematic, or like it wouldn't be that broken.
It's not.
Like, all right, we have Black Mage. This is again another cycle. So we have 2 cycles of backups this time. This is a standard unit category FFTA. All these have this action ability where if the forward of their element entered the play this turn, you can sacrifice them to gain an effect. This one is choose a forward, deal it 5k. In general, I actually really like these backups. I think that the ceiling on them is pretty, like the floor is pretty low. Like, if you play that down early, being able to always cash out backups feels really nice to me. It means you can run more backups, and getting kind of this like early game backup that later on is a Freeburn Hilder for like the lowest possible cost, right? Like play a Zac from your LB deck and then crack the Black Mage, you've done 8k to something, right?
Yeah.
5k is a nice number for like popping your own Magissas. You can snipe a last well from a Knights player. I don't hate this one at all. Like, I think there's potential. I mean, the biggest knock against it is that, like, for Magissa, they just got the Monk backup last set, who, like, was the best card they could have ever gotten for that deck for backups. Is Black Mage going to overtake that slot? Probably not, but I could see some number of this in those decks.
I personally hate these, but that's just because if anyone knows me, I'm just not a guy who wants to sacrifice my backup, so it's just not for me. One thing I do like about all these is that the ability to sacrifice them does not require them to dull, so you can actually dull them for CP and then get rid of them. That's a pretty cool little feature.
Yeah, and that I think if they couldn't do that, they would be dead on arrival. But the fact that you can like the turn you play this, you can go play this, play a forward, and then sack this at the same turn even is kind of like it turns it into like a 2 CP bad summon, but like a 2 CP bad summon that's also a backup is pretty strong, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of summons, we have Salamander. It's from 12 Revenant Wings, 3 cost EX burst, choose a forward, and up to one other forward, deal the forward 7,000. If you control 5 more backups, deal the latter 5k. I think it's fine. I don't know. There are probably metas where this card will be good if, like, a deck that plays fire cards and plays a lot of backups is in the meta, and the rest of the meta plays a lot of 7k forwards. Seems like a pretty, or like small things, like that could be the thing. I think this format's a really bad format for it, though. Like, right now, people are playing, like, the Opus 12 Ifrit to, like, ping for 9k because you have to hit 9k with your burst right now. So this isn't Salamander's format, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I always appreciate a card that encourages you to build backups. You and I have kind of talked about that before. I would like it better if you could double up the damage, if you could just shoot one thing for 12. The fact that you have to split it is like, I don't care about that as much.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like the negative. I do like that it's not like you have to choose 2 forwards too. Like, you can choose one,
which is nice.
So, like, there's nice things here. Joshua. So this is our other fire dominant. 1 cost forward. 3k, category 16. Priming into Phoenix for 3 fire. When it enters the field, choose an icon or job dominant and break some, put it at the bottom of its owner's deck. So, I'm just going to spoil. Phoenix is really good. Phoenix is one of the best cards in the set, I think. And in that situation, I think Joshua has to be good. I do think the priming cost is really restrictive. Being 3 fire pips sucks. It means you have to have a fire backup and a fire card in hand. But we've seen Tidus. This is very doable. Like, 3 pips of 1 color. So when you get to like 5, it starts to become really tricky. The entry effect is weird, though. Usually, I actually want my stuff to stay in the break zone once I've drawn it. But maybe you need the recovery in a dominant deck, so you can run 2 Shivas. Oh, I've drawn all my Ifrits. I'll put 1 back now, right? I don't know. It's a weird one for me.
Joshua is my favorite character from 16, a game that I didn't really love overall, but I really did like this character. I kind of like his entry effect just because it's kind of, I'm always like planning for the worst possible luck. And it's nice to have that contingency plan of, like you just said, oops, I drew all the phoenixes. Okay, let me guarantee put one back in, and then I can immediately and turn into him. So, yeah, I think he's cute. And like you said, we know Phoenix is very good, so I like him.
Yep. Cetia. This is a whole group new archetype they're adding to the game. They're all common except for one card, and they all read like commons to me. So it's the 4-cost BE Warrior of the Crystal. All of them have the ability to ignore the color requirement and reduce their cost by 2 if you pay them with the crystal instead. And when she enters the field, she does 4k for each Warrior of the Crystal you control. This is probably one of the more playable of this set. I'm going to hold off on talking about this. I think it's easier to talk about them as like a nebulous whole when we get to the last one.
Sure.
I think this is one of the better ones, though, and I think it's going to be a really weird thing. I don't think that they're very strong on their own, though.
Yeah, they kind of read like soiree light to me, so I guess we'll see how they end up being.
Yep. Alright, so here we are. We're on Takatsugu. This is a Type 0 9-cost 9k. Not a lot of 9 costs in the game. Commanding officer, when it enters the field due to your cast, search for 2 fire forwards of 2 or less, play them onto the field, and when a forward other than Takatsugu enters your field, choose a forward, deal it 2,000 damage. Do you feel lucky?
Yeah.
So I am probably going to come off too harsh on this guy, but like I don't think I would ever play a deck that just says like, do you have a Matarasu or a Leviathan, and if so, I lose. Because, like, what I think you have to do with this guy is you go first, play a backup, turn to Takatsugu, do you have the Amat, my friend?
Yeah.
And it's like, but even that doesn't win, like, it doesn't win the game when you do that. So you open yourself up to losing the game without guaranteeing you win the game. I think that's, like, a really big deal, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, the payoff is 2 fire forwards of cost 2 or less. It's like, okay, everyone's going to say Zidane, because then you can maybe protect your field once you do that, but you still got to, like, if you do that, that field has to stick for 3 turns to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which, maybe, like, it'll stick around for a turn and a half, right? But if you hit a burst, and there are decks running 25 bursts right now, I just don't see this card really doing, like, I sort of like, oh, you can play Fire Water Firion from the deck. But Fire Water Firion doesn't have any text until you get to 5 characters, which this guy feels like you want to play him early. So then it's like, well, maybe you ramp to 5 backups and then you play this guy, but then, like, think of, like, even in Water doesn't want to cast Leviathan. And then, like, the later you go, those targets are going to start to dwindle in your deck, and they're going to start running lower and lower and lower. So, I don't like this guy. I might be crazy. I just think this card is outright bad.
No, I fully agree with you. His second effect is entirely underwhelming. I don't know why it's so low, 2,000. And he just kind of reads to me like a bad version of Noct from the Warriors of Darkness. And we know how bad it felt if they Amaterasu'd that card and you just dumped your whole hand for him trying to go aggro. But I felt like the payoff with Noct was way bigger. Like you said, Zidane's probably the best one to get early. I thought of Firion too, but like you said, then he doesn't have haste, so he can't draw the card. So I don't know. For an Unga Bunga, which I assume is meant to be kind of an Unga Bunga card, like I feel like there's way better options. So I'm with you. I don't think this is very good.
And it should be noted, he does technically pay for himself. If you count the cards that you search as 2, and you play them from deck for 2, he is an 8. He plays 8 cost. Like, he just generates 8 CP from deck, just poofs it onto the field. But again, it's so risky to go for in so many ways. And like there are good targets for it. Maybe you just play a deck with a bunch of fire forwards of cost 2 and you run this guy there anyway. And there's cards like Leftia can make the ping relevant, make them each 4k pings, and then that like kill something now. But I would be shocked if this guy is like Warrior of Light or Gigawall 2.0, which is what it seems like he wants to be.
Yeah.
Our next cycle, we have Human, which is a category tactics. This whole cycle is 3 cost standard unit backups that when they enter the field, they draw a card. And if that was the only text on any of these backups, I would love them. There are elements that just don't have this consistently. Lightning, ice, even Earth could considered as like a side grade to Miner if you just don't want to run 18 backups to enable Miner. Maybe you run the Earth variant of this, right? So in that situation, I already like these cards. I think Human also, the second ability of just ping for 7k, it's a pretty good little bonus effect. I think it's just a strict upgrade over Geomancer in almost every situation. The only downside is you can't break these like Geomancer can if you want to like clear backups for something.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think these are playable whether you're on Mono Fire or not. And I think in Mono Fire, I'm very happy to continue playing these. Unlike the Opus 21 ones, there's no like restriction of like, oh, it has to be the first, second, or third backup you play. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just like them. I think they're good.
No, I agree. I've been harsh on the design team in the past, and I think they do deserve credit for all the standard units they've been making these sets. They are trying to make them different and trying to give them like each something to do, and I appreciate that. I like that at their worst, they're just draw a card, and they fit in every slot. The only real downside I can even think of this one is that technically the second effect is mandatory. So if you're the only one with a forward, you would have to shoot your own forward. But other than that, I like these.
Yeah. What other note? I do remember that the set 21 that had the crystal gen ones was a great limited set because of them. Because it was so easy to get your backups into play.
Yes.
Like every element had good backups that could cycle for more cards. These will help with limited as well. I think they're great backups for limited. IGN trying to hop in there with an advertisement. Sofo, my beloved. We have Neon, 5-cost Job Red Mage, category Sofo. When Neon enters the field, choose a forward opponent controls, deal it 5,000 damage, gain a crystal. For fire and a crystal, choose a forward, deal it 5,000 damage. I love the art on these cards. I sort of see the lore of what they're going for. This reads like one of the worst limited archetypes they've ever made for this game. I think Neon's going to be great in limited. This is like one of the best cards in the set for limited. Modal ping on a big body that can also do more damage if she needs to, or do less damage, or if you generate a lot of extra crystals, she can do kind of machine gun off if you need to. She's going to be great there. I would be shocked if there's anywhere else worth playing her.
I like that she gives herself the crystal that you're clearly supposed to spend right away, but I'm not trying to pay 6 to do a one-time 10k ping. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm already nervous at doing that to get 2 of those with Clive and Ifrit with even bigger upside, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're just so far past the point of these, which is unfortunate. Sofo it's going to be the red-haired stepchild for another 3 sets until we get more support again.
Yeah.
Another set of summons. So there are 2 summons to the set. There's a common and a hero in every element. This is the hero summon for fire. So Bahamut, 5-cost, category 10. Some great Mobius art. I always love the Mobius art.
Mm-hmm. Wait, is that Mobius art?
This is original. Sorry, some of the other stuff. The Valafor is Mobius art.
Oh yeah.
This is new art. Awesome. Choose a forward, deal it 20,000 damage. Or deal 10,000 damage to all the forwards opponent controls. Remove the top card of your deck from the game until there are only 3 cards left. You get to choose one. What do you think of this one, Travis? This one's gotten a lot of people talking.
So I adore the art because the 10 version of Bahamut is probably my favorite design of his, and Bahamut has always been my favorite summon in the Final Fantasy games, so I've always got a soft spot for him. My jaw dropped when I read that second effect for the first time. Well, when I read the first sentence, I was like, on a summon? That's insane. And then I kept reading. I was like, oh, never mind. It's unplayable unless you're going for the finish. It's clearly an insane finisher. And the fact that you could cast this on your opponent's turn is really nutty. Of course, then you have to you better be damn sure you're winning that next turn though, or you're just going to lose the deck out. And then the 20k is just so over the top. We have Bahamuts that do enough damage, have EX burst, or maybe remove them from the game. So I don't know. I don't know if you could put something like this in your deck to get, okay, I'm going to go for that finish now. You can't use that second effect. You can't just use that willy-nilly. It's middle of the game. I've dealt no damage. I'll just 10k your board and then mill myself to death. That's unplayable. So I love it, and I love that they're going for the big boss energy with him, but competitive? I don't think so.
Oh, I think this card absolutely is competitive.
Really?
There are so many decks that will love a one-sided board wipe before going for a game. This is an instant
yeah,
speed,
yeah.
one-sided board wipe that ends the game. If you have
True.
the ability to do that. You build a wide board of all these monsters or whatever else, and your opponent goes to their main phase 2, is about to pass, and you go, whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't, not so fast. 10k your entire field. I think there is, and it's endlessly searchable. There are 2 different backups that search fire summons. There are 2 different Terras in fire that get back summons. There's Citra that can pull her back from the break zone if you want to play a generic option. There's Caius that can get this and play it for free. And it's honestly not even bad to use that first effect off of Caius. 5 CP. Kill that guy in particular. Later on, maybe I'll get it back with a Terra and push for game. I think that, yeah, you obviously have to know you're going to win the game that turn, but it does say you win the game.
Yeah.
I've seen kind of like how a lot of old monster decks used to do the Valifor, this really difficult to interact with thing that just clears the field and just march in with a Congo line of monsters. I've seen that done with the light summon that removes cards from the top of your deck with the number of forwards removed from the game. That was done to me at U.S. Nationals last year. This to me is a better version of that summon because you can actually discard this if you draw it too early. So I really like it. I think it's a good one-of in a lot of fire decks.
I can't wait to see someone try to finish the game and then hit an EX burst and it foils their plan.
Or their opponent mind flayers them twice.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Oops.
But if that Bahamut wasn't to your flavor, how about this one? From Stranger of Paradise,
Right.
9-cost Dragon. EX Burst, choose a forward, deal at 8,000 damage. And then when a forward dealt damage by Bahamut is put in the field in the break, so the same turn, Bahamut deals them a point of damage. Notably, that is a field ability that is not tied to the first one, so if you get him on a burst, you don't get the damage.
Correct.
It's a common. I think it's going to be really funny in draft to see this guy go to damage and pop somebody over and over and over again. There's really funny memes you could do with giving him the ability to ping forwards with the blacksmith that lets him attack and do damage when he does stuff or whatever, and you could do damage to all their forwards with them and then kill them to do a bunch of damage. I think it's really cute. I don't think it's remotely competitive.
Why does it cost 9? That seems so pricey.
Yeah, I don't know. I would maybe consider it at 7.
Yeah.
Kill a guy,
maybe.
do a point of damage.
If the second effect was tied to the EX burst, I could see people playing it because you could cheese people. You accidentally killed yourself by attacking me. But because they're separate, I can't see anyone playing this outside limited.
If it was tied to the first one, this would be a card that someone at your locals would have one copy of in every single deck they play.
Yeah.
On the off chance they spike it into damage and win a game off of it. Everybody has that one guy at locals that will do stuff like that. They'll play one card that no one should play for the one chance that it does that. But yeah, no, I don't think this card, even off of Caius, you're still paying 9. You just get a Caius for free in the process. Here's the Phoenix that we were talking about earlier. So category 16. 4 cost, job icon. When it attacks or when Joshua primes into Phoenix, choose a fire forward cost 2 to break zone, play it onto the field. The big thing that comes to mind for me whenever I read cards like this Reanimator effect, the ability to play a forward from the break zone of the field, almost all of these are playable.
Yes.
Layla Viking, way back in the day. Alize plus a Stola. Ramza for Corilla. If a card says choose a 40 to break zone, play it on the field, Montleonis, Ursula, every single one of these cards has been good and seen play at some point.
Yep.
And I think even the ones that are fringe, like White Mage, Revised Standard Unit, I think that card could see play in the future for a similar reason. I mean, that makes Phoenix to me almost read like a slam dunk. This card has to be playable somewhere.
Is priming? Oh, I just want to ask: is priming like shifting in Lorcana, where it retains the status of the card it originally was? So, if Joshua had summoning sickness, will the Phoenix have summoning sickness?
Yes, Phoenix will still be summoning sick.
But if Joshua could attack, Phoenix doesn't need haste; it can attack right away.
It's the same card.
Okay, so it could prime, trigger the effect, immediately attack, trigger again. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And fire has a lot of ways of giving haste. There's the haste goblin. Um, People have noted that like you can run the fire lightning null, and you can revive that with
Mhm.
Phoenix when you prime. That null gives the Phoenix haste, so that when you attack with the Phoenix, you can revive another guy, which could be really interesting. So I don't know. I just the fact that it does that reanimator effect and can continuously redo it. I think it's a pretty big deck building cost because you do probably want to run the Joshuas with this to, like that way it is just like 4 cost revive somebody, but I think it's pretty solid.
I like too that we just have an Opus 3 Phoenix effect on a body. Yeah, the negatives are it's only 7k, so it's pretty easy to put something in front of it. It has the double downside of it dies to Amaterasu and Mistdragon mess it up. But you know what? They got to have those cards. Like, as you said, the reanimators, the continuous reanimators are always very strong. And especially if the fact that you can prime, get a 2 cost, immediately attack, get another 2 cost. Like, that's incredibly strong. So I like the card a lot.
But notably, though, it is an on-attack effect. So if you don't prime into it or have a haste source, it does nothing, which is
Yeah.
really scary in modern Final Fantasy. So it's like a tricky one, but like I think that yeah, we've jumped through hoops for worse. Uh, this one should look a little familiar to any friends of the channel.
Yeah. I've seen this once or twice.
Um, Another one is Theatrhythm Commons. This one isn't particularly playable. Just he can either be a first striker or brave at the start of combat each turn. There's no warrior or rebel synergy. There's a more interesting Firion in the same set that we could talk about. This is mostly here for limited.
I can't believe he doesn't give both effects. Like, even if he gave First Strike, Brave, and Haste, would that be competitive? I don't think so. So I don't know why they were so timid with his design.
It would be really brutal limited if he did that, though. But
I guess so. But
you got to remember, a lot of these cards, especially the commons, are just designed to be limited fodder, and not every card
yeah,
can be good. So this you'd be
that's fair.
really obnoxious and limited with that. But the more interesting rebel we have Josef. When Josef enters the field, you can search for a rebel of cost 2 or less and play it to the field, and then you can sack him to give a rebel 2,000 power to the end of the turn. Uh, I mean, this card just seems pretty decent all the way around for the most part. The biggest issue that I have with him is that he's named Josef, and we already have a really good Josef Rebel support card that's got 3 cost EX burst. There's like the old chain of like Guy for Josef to get Firion, and then you play Firion for free from Ativus. And this
Hmm.
won't let you do that. This will just play the Firion from the deck, but you can't play this off of Guy. It does say play Firion from deck, which is exciting, so we'll see. I don't think there's too much more to say about this guy.
No, it's kind of crazy. I feel so underwhelmed by something that's 10 sets after the previous one because the burst was so good. Also, looking at the Rebel backups, there are only 2 cost ones. There's a Minwu and Ice and a Furion and Lightning. So like he can't really even help you ramp backups very well. So kind of underwhelmed by him.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a way to like search him and then play the other rebel backup, that actually could be interesting. In the same way that like Fat Chocobo playing a Chocolate from deck is really cool.
Yeah,
So that is something to keep an eye on for the future as well, and maybe that is worth it for a Fire Ice deck. I actually forgot about Minwu. It was one of my own spoilers. I shouldn't forget about that.
yeah,
That card was always like kind of interesting and decent. So you're right. That actually could be another way. If we get like a generic monk searcher or something in Fire, right?
yeah.
And that's it for Fire. I think let's do these by individual elements. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back in the future for Ice.
Bye.